Hey, it's Drybear. Back again with another Diablo 4 build guide, and today I'm going to teach you how to level quickly and efficiently with your Druid. I'll give you build sheets for 2 different leveling builds that are highly optimized for what you'll run into completing the campaign and going through your capstone dungeon to unlock the 3rd difficulty level and head into early endgame. And I like including 2 different builds because you may have a preference for one or the other. Maybe you like a certain skill more than the other. And of course, I would encourage you to play however you want for your first playthrough. This is just for people that want some kind of structure so that while they're leveling, they can enjoy the story and the encounters and stress less about optimization and build management. I also have a general leveling video that goes over all the mechanics that you'll run into while leveling, all of the encounters, the things that you need to collect, and the best ways to get XP and gear your character that I won't be covering in this video. And I'll leave a link to that video down below in the description. So I recommend watching that and then getting your build set up for your class. So let's get started. But first, you should come hang out with me on my live stream. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/Drybear. If you don't come hang out with me in the community, the next time you go for a high five with your best bud, you'll be slightly misaligned and it won't make a loud noise. All right, let's get started. We'll start with the first build, but these are going to both be 2 different builds, one for Werebear and one for Storm leveling. The one caveat I will give you for Druid is that if they have one of the highest variances in the experience you get while leveling. Depending on who you ask, they'll tell you that Druid is the worst leveling experience in the entire game, or they'll tell you that it's the best over any other class in the game. And the difference there, I think, is that there's a lot of big traps in the Druid kit that if you run into them or you don't manage your build properly, it's gonna feel like doo-doo. If you don't get the right things aligned, it feels really bad to play. But if you do get the right legendary and the right build put together and you know how the passives work, Druid is exceptionally tanky with incredibly high damage and very safe while leveling, so they can kind of just walk through rooms and destroy them. Super fun. So the first build that we're going to talk about today is a Werebear build. I think this is probably the easiest and probably most relaxing way to play Druid. You're going to focus mostly on switching between human form and bear form to proc extra passives using Storm Strike, and then Pulverize to clear whatever is on your screen. And we'll start, like we always do with all my build guides, with the builder, and we'll work our way down the tree, and then I'll try to hopefully explain everything so that if you want to make changes to this build so it fits your preferences, at least you know why things are the way they are, so you can make that manipulation. Now, for the Werebear build, there is an option where you can go Maul. There are ways where you can get bonus like damage or free overpowers if you're stuck in Werebear for a long time, and overpower with Pulverize is actually very strong. However, I think it's a lot easier while leveling to have a caster-based ability that takes you to human form, and then a Werebear style ability that takes you to bear form, because we get benefits and bonuses when we swap back and forth. Every time we shapeshift, we're going to pick up some passives that modify that. One of the best builders that you can get is Storm Strike. It's a melee attack in front of you. It deals damage. You gain damage reduction, which is really nice. It also has a chance to immobilize, but one of the best parts about Storm Strike is its very, very reproducible vulnerability. At base, when you're naked with no gear, vulnerability gives you a 20% damage out. It's also its own damage bucket, which means that you get scaling off of it regardless, which is really nice. And we get some bonuses from that as well. Coming down into the core tree, we're going to pick up Pulverize, one of the best leveling skills. And by the way, this is a full bear build, but there is a variant for this where you can turn Pulverize into an earth skill. And once you do that, you get crazy options for doing earth. The reason I didn't include it in my bear leveling build is that legendary that you get to turn Pulverize into an earth skill, you get towards the end of the campaign. So you're going to have to spend like 80% of the campaign without it. And it comes online towards the end, and it's great for Capstone Dungeon. It's great for starting into Nightmare. You can do an Earth build with Pulverize. You just get it online so late that I wanted to provide you with a good experience without waiting on that legendary. And then you'll kind of be able to modify it as you go along. But just be aware that exists there towards the end of the campaign. You'll be able to get a codex for your Codex of Power to make your Pulverize Earth, and then all of the Earth synergies and Earth spells that you pick up and all the Earth passives start to do amazing things for your Pulverize because it's considered an Earth ability. While you're leveling, I always recommend getting your skills first and then coming back and getting passives unless there's very specific ones that you need. So while you're going, just kind of get your skills picked up. Make sure you get your modifiers for those skills. For your main source of damage, which is usually your core skill, You want to put extra points into it for more damage output, and then kind of pick things up as you go along, but just make sure that you're grabbing things along the way. So we're going to grab Pulverize. We'll make it so that your next Pulverize will overpower every 12 seconds you remain healthy. So we're going to want to stay tanky, and with this bear build, we will be very tanky, but it guarantees overpowers, which gives us some very consistent sources of damage. Enemies overpowered by Pulverize are stunned. This won't work on bosses, but there's plenty of mobbing and just dungeon clearing when you're doing the campaign, and the stun is clutch, especially for overpower builds while leveling. When you're not gear optimized with an overpower build, remember, for overpower, your damage goes up when you have high HP and high fortify. So if you're taking lots of damage and you're dropping to low HP, your damage goes down as well as your current tankiness. So having CCs that stop enemies from hitting you maintains higher HP, which indirectly increases your damage output as well. So things like this can be useful while leveling. We also want to pick up critical strike chance against close enemies. Everything we do is going to be against close enemies. Our core and our builder are both melee range. And then these three here are awesome. You can pick up max spirit, and basic skills generate more spirit, these two passives here. And I would wait on getting wild impulses. This makes your Pulverize do more damage, but cost more spirit. Until you get further down in the tree and you have more spirit generation, I would hold on this, but towards like maybe level 35, level 40, you'll have so much spirit generation it won't actually matter, and you'll want to take the free damage. So we're going to do that. We're going to come down here, and then we're going to go up and pick up 2 defensives. I think most leveling builds should have defense in them. There's plenty of guides that I've seen out there where they run pure DPS. And yes, if you're going for world first, fastest clear, that's awesome. I'm not making a guide for the 0.01% of Diablo players that are trying to get their name on the hardcore level 100 statue. I'm making this guide for people that want a good leveling build that's going to provide them with a good experience and is going to make them strong enough to clear the whole campaign and the capstone dungeon so they can get into the game and start theory crafting and having fun. So that is the whole point of this. So for this, we're going to pick up 2 defensive skills here so that we have a very clean leveling experience. And remember, because we are overpowering, we want to be tanky. So we're going to grab both Debilitating Roar. This is a Bear skill. When you activate it, it gives you damage reduction for the enemies. Remember, 70% damage reduction on enemies around you means that you are going to maintain that fortify and HP a lot higher, which means that when you overpower, it's a big screw you kind of hit. We also want it to fortify us, which increases our damage on overpowers, and then it heals us as well, which keeps us a higher current HP value, which again increases the damage of our overpowers. We're also going to grab Earthen Bulwark for double defense. This gives us a big fat barrier, and then while we have it active, we're unstoppable. We cannot be CC'd. We can just walk around and do whatever we want, which is also useful for leveling, especially some of the acts that have a lot of slows and things like that. And then we're going to go grant another Fortify. So between your Debilitating Roar and your Earthen Bulwark, when you pop them back to back, you can get almost up to 50% Fortify, and that's when you start getting crazy overpower hits overall. An honorable mention is going to be Blood Howl. This is like the battle cry for Barbarian, but for Druid. It's just good in every build. It's insanely strong. You can run this if you want. You won't get the Fortify. And if you find that later on in the game, you have so much Fortify, you don't know what to do with it, then you can swap over for Blood Howl. This one heals you when you activate it. It lowers its cooldown when you kill enemies, and you can make it generate spirit, which is insanely strong. You can also give it attack speed, but none of the leveling builds will benefit too much from that. So for this one, you can swap this in. If you're just kind of casual leveling, I recommend running Earthen Bulwark and Debilitating Roar. But if you feel like you have too much Fortify and you can get some more damage in there, you can swap over to Blood Howl. Almost every single Druid build can run this ability. It's just that good. So we're going to go down into the Conjuration tree. For this bear build, we're not going to run any Conjurations. Honorable mention for Poison Creeper. This thing does ridiculous damage while you're leveling. It is insane how much AoE poison damage this does. You can also make it root targets. You can deal increased crit damage or extend the duration of poisoning. I don't think there's that many Druid builds that are super great for leveling. You can run the Rabies Werewolf build for leveling if you want, but I think this one's just going to be more of a streamlined experience. But what we do want from the Conjuration tree is going to be this here, Clarity. You gain 6 spirit when you transform into human form. So every time you go into a transformation form and come back to human, you'll gain 6 spirit. So remember, we're running a human form builder and a bear form spender. So what we can do, and we also running Debilitating Roar, which is a transformation as well. So what we can do is we can Storm Strike, build some energy, Pulverize, Storm Strike again to turn back into human and gain 6 spirit. Then we can pop Debilitating Roar, turn into bear, Storm Strike, turn back into human, get 6 spirit, Pulverize, Storm Strike, Pulverize, Storm Strike, Debilitating, Storm Strike. And when you alternate it like that, every time you turn back into a human, you get 6 spirit. And so you start generating crazy amounts of spirit while you're cycling through this. You're also generating spirit when you hit with Storm Strike, and it just becomes such a very casual, I think a very enjoyable experience while you're leveling. We're gonna come down here to the second to last part of the tree, and we're gonna pick up Trample. Another bear skill. This one is one of the best leveling abilities for Druid. It's so straightforward. You become unstoppable, you charge forward, you do a bunch of damage, you knock back enemies. When they get knocked back into terrain, if they're non-boss, then they take more damage and are stunned. Super awesome. If you get into a bad spot and you're surrounded, or you run through a doorway and a whole bunch of mobs pack into the doorway like sardines to try and follow you, trample right through the doorway, knock them all back, maybe they hit walls, you do a bunch of damage, and then you start like pulverizing the ground to get it. You get bonus damage on the first hit, which is nice for enhanced trample. You can also make it fortify you, which gives you more overpowered damage. If, again, you're getting too much fortify towards like level 40 to 50, you can also swap it to give you spirit for spending. And there's options here if you want to be even tankier. You can have it werebear form, where it increases your healing, or you can get more guaranteed overpowers while you're in werebear form. And again, special mention for the earth variant of this. If you actually get towards the campaign and you swap over to the pulverize legendary that makes it earth, you can start picking up these passives for more earth damage. And you can also pick up these dual element passives as well. That when you swap between storm and earth, you get crazy amounts, because like when you swap between storm and earth, you deal increased damage, but storm strike is storm or nature, and then your pulverize is now earth. So you can swap between those, which you're already doing, and you get a bunch of damage from it, which is really cool. For ultimate, we're obviously going to grab Grizzly Rage. This is one of the best leveling skills in the kit. Some leveling builds don't use legendaries, some do, and I think this one is an easy pickup. You activate it and you become super bear. Your skin will like crack with energy and you'll be all like insanely powered, like Super Saiyan. For 10 seconds, you gain bonus damage and bonus damage reduction. The damage bonus is increased each second while in the form, and kills extend the duration of the ultimate by additional second up to 10 seconds. And there's even a Codex legendary you can get, which extends this even more, which is really cool. You also gain permanent unstoppable while the ultimate is active. It has a 50-second cooldown. It's very short. You can keep this up a lot of the time. And you also gain fortify every second while you're in Grizzly Rage, so while you're in bear form. And remember, when we overpower, we have guaranteed overpower. And by this time, you can also pick up provocation, which means that while you're in werebear form, you get guaranteed overpower. So you can just start slamming the ground, me smash, Hulk smash. It's really good. I also recommend getting increased amount of fortify. This means that you can stagger your fortify abilities and they become more viable and valuable. And the shape-shifting options here are pretty cool too. When a shape-shifting skill transforms you into a different form, so every time you go into bear form, it deals increased damage, which you can do that for trample, and you can do that for pulverize, because you're going to do storm strikes in between. Storm strike into bear form, it just makes trample and pulverize do more damage if you're in human form when you activate them. You can also make it so that when you go into werebear form, you gain damage reduction against elites, and when you're shape-shifting, you get fortify. So you're just like this, you're a meat castle. You're an unstoppable Mack truck that just walks into rooms and just slams the ground until everything's dead, and nothing can really kill you. It's a very, very enjoyable experience. And lastly, for the key passive, I would get Ursine Strength. It just gives you 20% max life while in werebear, and you also deal increased damage while you're at high HP. But with all the fortify, damage reduction, and self-healing we've talked about, you should be at healthy. If you're wondering, healthy is above 80% HP and injured is below 35% HP. So as long as you're above 80%, you do 30% increased damage. So overall, bonkers. Going over to gear, for your spirit boons, there's a bunch of options to pick from if you really want to. The ones I recommend is for your deer, get maximum spirit. For eagle, you can pick up max life, which is when you have heals that are based on percent max life, it makes them more effective. For wolf, you can get extend the duration of ultimate skills, which is your Grizzly Rage, which makes your Grizzly Rage at base, instead of 10 seconds, it's 12.5 seconds duration, and you get damage bonus every second you're in it, and you can extend it. All of that's really cool. And And then for your last one, Snake, you can get every 10th kill will cause your next Earth skill to overpower. This one you pick up once you have the pulverized legendary that does Earth. If you don't have that, there's plenty of other options in here that are pretty good. Crit with shapeshifting skills can give you maximum life is probably your best bet, since this build doesn't run too much lucky hit. Then for legendaries, I talk about this in my leveling guides, but for this specifically, I would recommend only imprinting legendaries that you need for leveling on your accessories and then like boots and pants. All the other slots, especially your weapon, only put items there that have high base item level, great stats, and for weapon, high weapon damage. You should be replacing your weapon every 5 to 8 levels or so with something new and fresh. You can use obols to roll better weapons that are yellow that give you better stats. You can get drops as you're going along, but for your main armor slots and your weapon and your offhand, just put the best possible gear that you have. Don't worry about legendaries. And you can get your core legendaries from Codex and put them on accessories, because you lose the least by having old accessories, because they don't have as much of a stat contribution. So for this, Ghostwalker is amazing. You get this a little bit later into the story, and while unstoppable and for 4 seconds after, you get movement speed and you have no collision. Well, guess what? We get unstoppable from Earthen Bulwark, from Trample, from Grizzly Rage. So we have unstoppable most of the time, which means that we can walk through enemies and we never get blocked, and we have crazy movement speed. Awesome, awesome, awesome. For Amulet, you can put core skills, deal up to increased damage based on your amount of Fortify. It should be obvious that we are just Fortify kings at this point. We get way too much Fortify. It's insane. So we just deal 40% increased damage. If you imprint this from the Codex, it's always going to be the lowest value, so it'll be 20%, but maybe you get lucky and you get a drop that's higher. The one I was talking about here is the Aspect of Ursine Horror. This transforms Pulverize into an Earth skill. It's later on. You should work towards it, but I didn't want to like base the whole build on it and talk about it, because it does come online towards the end of the campaign. And then Edge Masters is great. Skills deal damage based on your primary available resource when cast. And once you're swapping between elements and shapeshifting, you'll have insane spirit generation anyways. For gems, you can go overpower damage. Obviously, max life means our heals are better. And anytime you're in melee range, generally my philosophy is if you're melee a lot, get armor. And if you're ranged a lot, get resistances, because that's what's going to hit you the most out of anything. So that is the first leveling build, the bear build. But I didn't want to leave you with just one option for leveling if you don't want to be a bear. This is a caster option for leveling. The caveat I'll give you to this one is a little bit harder to play. It's not a bad leveling build. I would consider it probably second best. The bear build is definitely more straightforward, decent damage, and very survivable. But this one is an option if you want to play it. The reason the second leveling build, the storm build, is a little bit harder to manage is because you actually have to manage uptime and snapshotting with Hurricane and with Cataclysm. Most of the skills in the game, if they are a duration, your lucky hit percent that is displayed on the ability is accounting for the entire use of the skill for the full duration. And it also, if you have like next ability causes X, that will apply for the entire duration of the channeling or the duration-based ability. So you want to kind of get most of your procs and damage and then activate your durations, but this one becomes really cool. The second reason why this one can be a little bit more challenging is that tornadoes without the legendary that guides them towards enemies can be very random. My recommendation is that if you go into melee range and you use the tornadoes and you can run with the tornadoes, so enemies that follow you get hit by them, you can use them very easily, but they are RNG until you get the legendary, which you won't get online right away. So you'll be able to pick that up. But there is a legendary for tornadoes. If you manage to get it, this build is probably actually better than the bear build, because what it does is it makes it so your tornadoes will heat seek towards enemies, which makes it far better. It means that you'll get crazy uptime on your damage, and then it'll be pretty good. So let's go through the storm build. This one is very good for leveling, but it's just an alternate option if you wanted to play with this. So you pick up Wind Shear for this one. You can run Storm Strike. Storm Strike is kind of a catch-all. It works in almost every build, unless you're doing like a like a true werewolf build. But in general, Storm Strike just works for everything. Very easy vulnerability, very good damage. I like having Wind Shear here because it's incredibly fast. It has a long range. It can hit most things on the screen, and it also will make vulnerable just like Storm Strike. And if you cleave or penetrate through targets, it gives you a bunch of extra spirit, which means you can summon more tornadoes. So all of that's really good I like wind shear for this one. Plus, it just feels very flexible and safe to use at a distance. We come down here, we're gonna put all of our points in tornado, get that up to 5 right away. This one spawns a tornado, goes in front. You have a 20% chance to create 2 tornadoes instead of 1. Based on watching them for hours and hours, it looks like when you shoot a tornado once, it'll go straight and then it'll RNG any direction it wants. But when you have 2 tornadoes, they seem to fork. Like one will go angled 45 degrees to the left and one will go angled 45 degrees to the right, and then they'll RNG. So if you go right up to like nuts to butts melee range against a mob and then you activate it and you get the second tornado, both those tornadoes will get a couple procs off instantly, which is really good. But you do want to be in melee range when you use the tornado. And lastly, enemies hit by a tornado for any reason at any time. If they get touched by the tornado, every time the tornado deals damage, it has a chance to become vulnerable. So between this from wind shear plus the vulnerable from tornado, you apply vulnerable a lot, which makes leveling very easy. It's a very good source of damage in general. Again, we want to pick up Heart of the Wild and Abundance, and then later on, once we feel good about our spirit generation, we can pick up Wild Impulses. Coming down here to defense, I think because you're going to be sitting at ranged and you have such incredible CC control, you can get away with not running Fortify or Barriers here. So we're going to run with Blood Howl for this build. So we're going to do Blood Howl. This gives us healing. It gives us cooldown reduction when we kill enemies, which can heal us again, and we get Spirit. So you're going to be going into melee range, popping your tornadoes, and then I recommend kind of running and kiting and using them and coming back. If you feel like you're in too much danger, you could very easily pick up Debilitating Roar or Earthen Bulwark instead and use those as a way to keep yourself safe and healthy while you're leveling. Coming down here, we are going to pick up the Goated Poison Creeper. This thing is so strong for leveling. Wolves are okay. I find that they die while leveling until you get minion damage and minion defense. Ravens are okay when you activate it, and it is a free way to get vulnerable, which is nice. But the damage they deal when it's not active is not really anything to write home about and not that great while leveling. And then Poison Creeper is just insane damage. It immobilizes all the targets. You do all this crazy room-wide AoE, and it has a pretty short cooldown. You can even put a bunch of points in this to make the damage even higher, which is really, really cool. So all of that works great. We're not going to be shapeshifting with this build unless we're running with Blood Howl. So what you can do with this is you can pick up Clarity if you want, and then you can Blood Howl and attack. And then kills will reset the cooldown of Blood Howl so that you can actually use it again. It's not going to be as repeatable if you were running, say, like Tornado and like a shapeshifting builder, but you can run it if you want for the extra spirit generation. It's just not as required. Coming down here for Storm, we want to pick up Hurricane. This thing, I know it was a meme in the public tests, but Hurricane starts getting really crazy, and you also have access early on to a legendary power that makes it so that for every second Hurricane is active, it does more and more damage, which is awesome because we can increase the duration of Hurricane and Cataclysm, and we can increase the duration of Cataclysm as well. So we can make it do more and more and more. We can make Cataclysm go more and more and more. And if for that, there's synergies for it as well. And it actually does really good damage towards the end of its cast. And it's excellent for large room-wide AoEs while you're throwing out tornadoes and all of that. We're going to pick up so that enemies are slowed while the Hurricane is inside of it. So most enemies should be slowed. You should be able to maintain decent uptime with this. It also has a chance to make enemies vulnerable. And we'll also get a point where your Storm skills will have a chance to cause vulnerable as well, but we have to get this in order to get the duration. Coming down to Ultimate, we're going to pick up Cataclysm. So basically, you can pop Cataclysm and you can pop Hurricane. You can throw down your tornadoes, and then you can just run around. Like, you actually don't even need to do anything. Everything's just going to die like they're in the middle of a hurricane, just dying to natural causes while you're running around picking flowers. It's actually crazy. So you can do Cataclysm here. This gives damage and lightning. You can increase the duration of it, and you can make vulnerable, which is really nice. And because we do have these options here, all of our damage is nature. We can do increased damage to elites, and we can also make it so that when nature magic skills consume spirit, it heals us, which means that every time we spawn a tornado, it will heal us. We'll get healing back, healing back, healing back. Your other ones won't because they're all cooldown-based abilities, but every tornado you spawn will heal you for 3% of your maximum life, which gives you a little bit more sustainability, which is really great. And then for this final piece here, we're going to pick up Perfect Storm. Storm skills that you cast grant 1 spirit for free. So a little bit of generation for free, and they deal increased damage when damaging a vulnerable, immobilized, or slowed enemy. Well, guess what? We have vulnerable for here. We have vulnerable for here. We have immobilize for here. We have slow for this as well. We also have vulnerable for this, and we have vulnerable for this. So our passive, all of our storm abilities will basically be doing 50% increased damage, which is really cool. It's just awesome. It makes the whole build come together. And again, what you're working towards the end of the campaign is getting that tornado legendary online so that you can get the heat-seeking tornadoes. But until then, this build works just fine. We're also going to defense here. You need these here, especially when you're not running fortify or defenses. So it's more magic resist, more damage reduction every time you blood howl, which will heal you. And then you can just kind of pop all your storm abilities and run around like a dingus, and everything on the screen should die. So this is your other option. If you don't want to be a bear, you don't want to be full melee, you can sit at range with this. The only time you need to get in melee is for tornado, and even then you can run along with the tornadoes and run away. And that is the build there. For legendaries, similar to the first, I think what you want to work towards is Aspect of the Tempest. This is a codex-based legendary, very easy to get. Hurricane damage is increased for every second while it's active. Expectant gives you more damage for your next core skill by up to 30% after you do basics. So you can wind shear a bunch, throw out a tornado, wind shear a bunch, throw out a tornado. Edge Masters is also good. You do more damage. So what you can do is fill up your spirit with your wind shear, throw out a big fat tornado and just run along with it and keep up with it. Throw out your storms, immobilize, blood howl, and keep going at it. And then again, Ghostwalker's aspect, especially if you're running Earthen Bulwark, can be really nice. You can get some other options here that are codex focused. Like Quicksand can be really good if you want to put some extra earth in there. Wind Striker is also good, give you some movement speed as well. So some of that stuff is really nice. And Storm Shifter's aspect is great. You can get this in Kyrgyzstan, which is pretty fast. While Hurricane is active, you gain +2 ranks to all of your shapeshifting skills, which is just going to be Blood Howl. But if you're running, like, say, Blood Howl and Debilitating Roar along with Poison Creeper, you can get some value out of that. But this is what I would recommend just for leveling, and I think you'll do just fine. So hopefully one of these two builds appeals to you, and that is going to be it. So enjoy, have fun, enjoy the launch. If you found value in the video, leave a like down below. Leave a comment. It helps me out tremendously, helps this video get seen by more people, and helps me out directly. And of course, if you have any questions, come hang out with me on my live stream. I'd love to chat with you. Be happy to answer any questions you have there. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.